Welcome everyone. I'm Walt Schulmore, Vice President at ScienceBoard.net, and I'm pleased to be here with Vered Caplan, CEO at Orgenesis. Vered, thank you so much for joining us here today.
Thank you for having me.
Really appreciate it. One of the questions that came in when we knew that we were going to be speaking with you today was something that's pretty important to our audience, and it came across as wondering why cell and gene therapies, they're so complex, expensive, and challenging to bring to the market.
Well, I think that's the question of the industry, so I'm glad you brought it up. And I think it's a complex answer. There's a couple of factors. First one, this is a personalized medicine, right? How are these products made? You take cells from a patient, take them out, bring them to your industrial or center or wherever you're making them. You reprogram them, you expand them, you package them, and you send them back. These are small batches, right, per patient. Even if you're talking about an allogeneic, which is not that person's cells, you're taking cells from someone else, it's still very small batches. So factor number one, personalized small batch production. Second issue is your source material. Where is your source material coming from? From that same individual. So you keep having changes. The whole process has to be adapted to that person. Third issue, if you look at biotech, traditional biotech, what are you doing? You're taking a gene, putting it in a cell, right? Expanding big bioreactors, and then you're harvesting the cell, and then you are sterilizing the product, as you do with most products. Here you have a living drug. You don't throw away the cell. The cell is the carrier of the therapeutic agent. So everything has to be done in a very sterile environment, because sterilizations mean killing everything that's alive, right? So you can't do that. Third issue is you are talking about short production times, right? You have to get that therapy, especially if you want it fresh. And we all know fresh cells are better than frozen ones, right? So you've got all these factors. Put on top of that most of these products were developed in wonderful research institutes, right? But very manual processes. So these are the factors that influence this space. And in order to make these available, less complex, we as an industry, this industry has to face these challenges and find good solutions.
So it's really more about the customization, the personalization, really being patient-centric on each process of it that really makes it as complex as it needs to be.
And the fact that you can't sterilize these products, right? The living drugs.
Excellent point. I wanted to talk about Orgenesis in specifics and Orgenesis point-of-care platform. Simplifying the process, lowering the cost of providing advanced therapies to the patients who need them. How does Orgenesis separate themselves in that?
So we've been in this field, working in this area for over a decade. We were actually one of the first companies in this space. And working with products from all over the world, one of the biggest suppliers, right? We're kind of the industrial partner in this space. And we've been dealing with exactly the challenges we spoke before for over a decade. So the solutions we have built up actually address those issues. And it's not that we kind of came up with a magical, miraculous solution. No, it was step by step we were looking for solutions. So if we look and address the issues we brought up before, okay? You don't want sterility, right? You want to make this. Why is making keeping the product sterile so expensive? Because you've got very expensive clean rooms, and the most expensive thing is the people working in the clean rooms. So you have to close the system. You have to automate. You want to put the process in a box and the people outside, right? You want your sterile box, everything going on inside, and people on the outside. That's one thing. We spoke about the fact that these products are personalized. But on the other hand, you want to keep quality assurance. You want to continuously duplicate them. So if you kind of build a box with the biology inside, and you make this one unit, you unitize that, okay? Now you're not changing the production from place to place. It's just, I always like to give this example. If you make a wonderful apple pie, that's great. But if you want to have an apple pie chain all across the country, you better have a very good apple pie making box, right? Because you want the same level of quality everywhere. And the last issue is every time you take the source material and you take it from here and you send it over to a distant location, and then you have to bring the final product back, that is so much logistics, cost, and risk, right?
Right.
Think of it, of doing all the bone marrow transplantations in the US, sending it over to one center. It's almost, logistics are impossible. So if you want to lower risk, make these products more available, you want to make sure you have the option of putting your wonderful little boxes very close to the centers who need them, as close as needed, so there's no need to freeze these products, there's no need to take them in complex logistics on flights, and they can be available. And all these procedures, okay, less people in sterile clean rooms, closer to the patient, closed loop production, all these reduce the cost of the product and make it affordable.
Yeah, it's interesting going from personalization to customization for patients, as we talked about earlier, and now getting into the distribution and deployment aspect of it and all the different steps of the process and how to remain consistent in those steps of the process. And I guess it kind of leads up to my next question, and it's really more of a theoretical question, because it's, would you say in a perfect world you'd be able to cut out biotech in general, in a sense, in essentially the ecosystem, by delivering directly to hospitals and healthcare providers with the capabilities to develop their own CGTs without needing to spin out to a biotech?
Well, I am not at all. I mean, I think the role of biotech is to develop these drugs.
Right.
Just think of, you're a biotech company. You want to do a clinical trial. Okay. You want to do it for phase 1.
Yeah.
10, 20 patients in this space, right? Yeah. Okay, you have one location. You need somebody to make it for you, right? So you can take a subcontractor, you can build a facility, but that's just a phase 1, right? Now you want to duplicate this to a phase 2. You need more centers. Yeah. And you're going to your phase 3 or to market. You need somebody to help you do that.
Yeah.
Our role as a company is not, we can provide the services, right? We can give the support. That's why we become an industrial partner to biotech, right? Sometimes the hospitals begin their own development. Okay, we can support that as well because we're decentralized. Right. But biotech's really goal is to get these products to market and to market these products, right? We are here to supplement that and to kind of be that bridge between the hospitals and the biotech companies. Yeah,
it's an interesting question. I mean, you know, there's people sometimes don't realize the need for a biotech partner when you're delivering something directly to patient, but there really is in most cases an actual need for a biotech partner, like you mentioned.
And if you look traditionally at biotech, right, just even the recombinant products, you always see there's like two sides of it, right? The development, the clinical kind of development, the research. That's a very different mindset and set of capabilities than you have for the biotech companies that are the suppliers, right? The big manufacturers, the production. In our case, and this is typical of the entire field, and it's almost a regulatory requirement, the manufacturer actually becomes the distributor, right? So we have kind of a joint role of being the distributor, manufacturer. Because we work with so many medical centers, sometimes people ask us to help with clinical work, which we also provide services for, and support the clinical development. But at the end of the day, it's a partnership between who owns the products, who makes the products, and who uses the products. Right.
Yeah. No, it makes perfect sense. Going back to Orgenesis specifically, let's talk about adoption. What kind of adoption are you seeing with the placement of Orgenesis mobile processing units in lab for the development of cell and gene therapies at hospitals specifically?
So we've seen, so much enthusiasm. We call these Orgenesis mobile production in units and labs ampules.
Ampules.
And I can tell you, people just talk about them affectionately.
Oh, that's fun.
I've seen, hospital centers, where's our ampule? We want an ampule. I mean, I love that they kind of really, this adoption, which is almost emotional, because think of the distress, okay?
Right.
patients read about this. Clinicians know about this research. Everybody wants these therapies. Think of people that have dire need. There was just a conference in Europe. They're talking about only 10% of patients who need the CAR-Ts get them, right?
Yes.
So think of how much need there is. And the really, I've seen such brave kind of researchers try to build clean rooms in the hospitals to try to resolve this, working day and night. So when they suddenly realize there is a possible solution, right? And there's a way to kind of get around this. And when you're talking about building clean rooms, I just want to make this very clear to everyone. This can take 2 to 3 years.
Yeah.
It's a very long process. Setting up another mobile unit, duplicating a unit from somewhere else, that's 2-3 months.
Yeah.
Setting it up, another 3 months. But you're not talking about years to wait for a therapy to be available, right? And it doesn't matter and how much you want to decentralize, doesn't matter. I can tell you those countries where we have our central hub, which is very traditional, like the quality assurance, the training, supplier income.
Yes.
And these ampules, you can spread them about as much as you like. So
Yeah.
you have an option, you have flexibility, right? And that's what's important.
Yeah, and it was just came back from Europe myself at a cell and gene conference, and someone was discussing ampules at the time. So I wanted to just convey to the audience, what an ampule actually was. So coming back to that for a second, and this is a little bit of an unexpected question that I'm going to be posing at you, but I know that you just received a very prestigious European grant for IPS. Congratulations on that, first of all. I was wondering if you could speak more to that.
So, today we deal very much with the T cell, NK cells, the immune cells. You've got regenerative medicine. We do a couple things of that. But we always have to look into the future. One of the things I love about this space, and just because of more kind of personal kind of interest, it moves so quickly, right? Started working with this company 10 years ago. There were barely any clinical trials. Today there's thousands.
Yeah.
And the technology is developing so quickly. So one of the things, and we take that into account when we build our ampules, so it's very easy to replace kind of the processing units and adapt to new systems and technologies. But when you look at it, today we're talking about cells you harvest from the blood, from the tissue. But, we have this whole wonderful future where we can, thanks to Professor Yamanaka, won the Nobel Prize, right? You can take skin cells, move them back to iPS kind of, and then induce pluripotent cells, right? And move them to different tissues you need. And we need to be all looking at, and the future, and any technology, but especially in this technology, moves much quicker than the past, right? So we know that in the next few years, there's going to be so much development around this, and we want to make sure that we can take a patient's IPS and use them to make any cells he needs. So the grant we received is actually part of the process that we're ampulizing autologous IPS production. And it's a partnership with a couple of wonderful companies. And we're very excited about this, right? Because if we can do this with IPS cells, when you look at this space and just think about it in general, you can almost think of it as a kind of next generation of human evolution, right? And there's a wonderful book by Noah Harari, it's called Homo Sapiens, right? And he talks about this, that we're kind of taking responsibility of how we develop biologically, and we want that possibility, that reprogramming, because you don't really manufacture cells, right? You reprogram them to do what you want them to do. And taking that, we want to make sure these therapies, this technology is available to everyone, right? So that's kind of our responsibility. And that's the goal we've taken as a company, but I think the whole industry understands that's the responsibility.
Well, it's truly an amazing time that we're living in this science, and congratulations again on the fellowship. And Vered, I thank you very much for your time today. I know you got a busy day ahead of you. Once again, I want to thank Vered Caplan, CEO at Orgenesis, and we'll be speaking to you all soon.